Welcome back to another episode of the 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about pushing it to the limits, going beyond the norm, going beyond your own expectations, going beyond the expectations that others place on you. A good place to start
That's
would
some real
be,
shit right there.
for
That's some
sure,
real shit. People limit you. I got a funny story about that.
go for it.
We got a friend that's like he's indigent. He asked. I saw him the other day.
Don't put no names out there. I'm going to beep that shit out.
Yeah. Whatever. I saw him the other day. He asked about you. So, but there's a funny story behind that. And so he was hanging out with him, right? And you know what he said to me? He's like, he said, duct tape. I said, what's up? You know that cat right there? He really thinks he's better than me. I said, no, that's not what it is. You thought you were better than him, and then you realize with all the stuff he doesn't have, he doesn't care what you think of him. You, he literally does not care that he doesn't have anything, and you thought hanging out with him would make yourself feel better until you realize that that dude don't subscribe to your what's the word I'm looking for? Your idea of value. He does not care.
In other
He,
words, Sully, Mr. Han, I want to leave your island. That is not possible. Bullshit, Mr. Hand Man. Man,
yeah,
you come right out of a comic book.
that 100%. What it was is he thought that hanging around that other guy would make him feel better about himself,
Wow.
and instead it made him feel worse.
Expectations.
Yeah, he expected that this guy would be like gracious to hang around him or something, or like, yes,
Wow.
thank you for taking your time out your day to not. He doesn't care if you share air with him or not, and because of that, you actually got your feelings hurt.
Wow.
Yeah, you trying to look down on somebody, and
Wait a minute.
you can't look down on them.
So was this your old neighbor that had the
Yes.
expectations?
Expectations.
Oh, Negro.
He thought that hanging out with that guy was going to make him feel better about himself, and I think it actually made him feel worse.
What? You know what? Why do you think he? What? Okay, just without going down the rabbit hole, please, because we only got so much time to record this shit. Going down that rabbit hole, because that's not one I really give a fuck to explore.
Yeah, you're talking about on the personal level. I don't care what his problem is,
I
but
don't
you're
give
asking
a
me,
fuck.
what do you think he hoped to find? And I think it was is like he knows all the tragedy, all the messed up stuff this guy done did. You know, he knows this guy literally has been homeless at some point in time and all this other stuff.
And lost
And
his
he
fucking
figured,
mind.
yeah. Oh, I don't know if he lost. I don't
Nah,
know if he.
nah.
I don't.
The motherfucker lost his mind. Go ahead.
Oh no. What I'm trying to tell you is he's been like that longer than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he lost his mind. I think he was like that probably 27 years ago, 30 years ago. People just didn't realize it. That's another conversation. But what I'm saying is that the other guy thought, if I hang out with this dude, he'll be like, I'm so happy to see you, and kiss his ass and make him feel better about himself. And the other guy was like,
Because what it
man,
was, listen, this the thing. He still had the childhood veneer on. He had rose-colored glasses on when he was looking at that dude, talking to that dude. But he didn't realize that all that had been melted away, and a patina of funk and disappointment and heartache and sadness and loneliness had encrusted over him and caused him to become somebody completely different.
I don't think that's what it is. I think that
You
he
know,
thought that
I
that
think so.
no,
I think the death of a certain someone caused it.
no. Okay, I think that they both had something in common when it came to loss, and he thought that reaching out to that guy would help him with his loss
Hmm.
and make him feel better about himself. If that's what you're saying, probably a little bit of that. But I think the other reason was is just that that guy is in a bad situation in his eyes, but the individual itself is defining his own reality.
Yep.
You got to understand when you define your own reality, nobody else can put those limitations on you. Like, hey man, you ain't got no car, you ain't got no house, you ain't got no clothes, you're not as good as me. Yeah, but if that person ain't competing in your race, if he's competing in a
No,
different race,
he's in his own
then
head.
yes, he sees himself as being successful. You know what I'm saying? So when the homeless guy looked down on the other guy was crushed. He just knew this guy was going to kiss his hairy beanbag.
Anyway, well, all right, that's enough inside baseball for today. So, so let's talk a little bit about from a physical standpoint. Let's start there. When you are working out, when you are growing as an adult, reaching toward adulthood, going through first, you're a preteen, and your body's exploding and going crazy and all these hormones and everything and all this stuff, and you getting into fights and getting punched in the face and people punching you, and you're going through a learning process on a cellular level, and you're absorbing all this into the cells of your body, and you can call it muscle memory or cellular memory, but it creates a baseline that you're used
Hmm.
to operating at. And if you continue to stay at that baseline, you pretty much will have a life that you create, and that is one of comfort only. I say that to say this: life is really about being uncomfortable. And the more you get used to being uncomfortable, the more comfortable you will be. Because,
Yeah, you raise your baseline. The harder you work, what used to, like it took like 3 push-ups to get your heart rate up,
yep,
but now it takes 50 push-ups to get your heart rate up.
yep,
You keep raising your baseline as you improve and you get stronger. And so then when something amazing happens, you might not even bat an eyebrow. You're like, you can't define me.
yo, and see,
Or
I'm
somebody.
so glad you said that because people put expectations on you. They do the same thing to me based on the way we look. And they're like, oh, pfft, man, that dude, he ain't about to do nothing. And then something happens. And then some type of like physical test is required. Where I'll give you an example. A while ago, a long time ago, I was on a job site and there was these white nationalists on the job site. And I could tell right away because when the foreman introduced us, he didn't look me in the eye at all. He was
Hmm.
the foreman was introducing him to everybody else, right? But there were like I was the only black person there, and when it came to me, he didn't look me in the eye. He looked down at his phone. I'm like, okay, all right. And each time he had to talk to me, he would never look me in my face. He would never look in my direction. I'm like, all right, man, I see what's going on. You know, I see, I see. You ain't down with the brown. Okay, cool, whatever.
It's cool. That's cool. That's cool.
Right. But there, so these guys are standing around this boulder, and they like each one tried to move it, and they just did not have the horsepower. So I waited. I went on working, and then when I had a free moment, I walked over to it, and they were within the line of sight of the boulder at the same time. I took a look at them, and I looked down the boulder. I crouched and I paused for a second, and at that moment, I summoned all of my faculties because I touched it. I knew once I touch something, I can feel like how heavy it is, right? I feel the mass of it. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a deadlift of about 560 pounds. So I reached down and I didn't use my muscles. I just lifted it with my spirit. And I lifted it up and I walked about 10 feet and I placed it on the wall. I looked at him and then I walked away. And I'm not being a dick when I'm doing that, but I am kind of like pulling my dick out at the same time
Yeah,
because
it's a pissing match.
yeah, it was. I mean, just call it what it was. It was like, oh, okay, you want to look down on me, huh? All right, man, cool. Let's get real primal real quick, and I'm gonna show you who's the big dog around this motherfucker. So I picked up this rock. This motherfucker was heavy, but I ain't give a shit. I ain't give a shit because I saw myself picking it up, walking 10 feet, and putting it on the wall, and I did it because my limits, I had pushed myself so far before. I had been so deep in the mud before that I had to push all the way through all that mud to get to the finish line. I've been in these situations over and over and over. And what it does, it's like Goku. Each time he fights a stronger opponent, he's just pushing his limit higher and higher and higher each time. And I always took that to heart, right? I always took that DBZ like ethos to heart because it's real. It is so real because steel sharpens steel. You have to go through these things to go beyond, to know what you're capable of. to explore your genetic potential and then go beyond your genetic potential, because your genetic potential only gets you so far. Soul power will take you the rest of the way, but you have to be able to push to get there. Feel me?
Look, um, we had a homeboy. One time I was making fun of him because he kept criticizing people for the women they were dating. Like, oh man, she's fat, she's fat, she's fat. I'm like, dude, man, you need to ease up on that. Every girl I seen you with for the past 7 years has been fat. What is your thing with fat girls when you're having sex with fat girls? And he said, man, it's like Goku. I fuck a fat chick. When I do fuck a skinny chick, I lose my goddamn mind. I go crazy on her because I've been fucking at 9 times Earth's gravity. And I'm like,
Oh, that's so good. That is so
I'm like,
good.
but he was serious. Knowing that you don't understand, this person was serious. See, the whole thing is we laughing because this is a joke, but we're also laughing because if you knew who, yes, he was dead damn serious. And I'm like, okay, I'll let you off with that one because I'm like, man, how are you so critical of other people? If anybody people I named that you had sex with, their names are heavy. you know, Tanisha. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, what the hell? How are you gonna be? He's like, yeah, man, I do that. So when I fuck a skinny chick, I can go nuts. I'm like, oh shit, fuck it. I respect that. Now, about the limitation part, people limit you to make themselves feel comfortable, and that's a big part of the whole race thing. It's not just the white supremacy part where you stop people from getting cars or getting houses and loans. Nah, you have to lower that person in your mind so you can justify what you're doing to them. So, when that guy just assumed that you were less than him and he found out you weren't, all of a sudden you'll win somebody over. The biggest racist in the world still wants you on his side. And that's because he thinks he can use you or she can use you. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
Um, I was just showing you what I could do just so you wouldn't want to fuck with me. You know, when I do the gun thing and I know all this shit about guns and these people like, yeah, I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm a black man. But I believe in the Second Amendment because you can't have the other ones without the Second Amendment. When I take the gun apart and show them how to put it back together, or when they find, remember that time we were shooting? I had a Sega at the time, and we were at the shooting range, and we were
Yep.
shooting this big ass semi-auto shotgun.
And two stalls down is a guy with
Yes.
a hand cannon, and he could not control that thing at all.
No, the funnier part was again they had looked down on us until we pulled that son of a bitch out, and we
And we
rained
started firing.
thunder down on.
He stopped.
Yeah,
He was like,
because
"What the fuck is that?"
mine was louder than his. Yes, mine was louder than his. He had some kind of 44 mag, but I pulled out this semi-automatic AK-47 based shotgun, and this is almost 20 years ago. This is before people even knew about the Vepr 12, the Segas, and all that kind of stuff, and the A10s, whatever, all those other shotguns. I had that shit first, and so we set fire to their
That shit
ass,
was
and all of a
fun.
sudden yeah, all of a sudden they came down. Hey, we're walking out. Hey, how you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. 5 minutes ago you didn't care about me, but when you realize that I had bigger firepower than you, because having more firepower made him comfortable. Going back to George Carlin and going back to Richard Pryor, MX is a bigger missile. Yeah, we Americans used to have an arms race with Russia. All you heard about was how big their missiles were. But when he realized my missile was bigger than his, physically I'm superior. Mentally I'm superior.
Physically, we have to push ourselves beyond our limits. Something as small as personal goals with fitness in the gym. You set a goal and you work to get beyond that. And people think it's mostly physical. Really, it's mental. It's mostly a mental thing. You have to see yourself, visualize yourself crossing that line mentally, physically. And when you finally push yourself beyond that, that information has been stored in your body. So you can then go back to that limit easily. But the point is not to go back to that limit. That new limit then becomes your baseline. And you actually like extrapolate that into different parts of your life. But just speaking physically right now, the best way to go about it is just like kind of just plan what you want to do with yourself. Say you want to lose weight. Say you want to gain muscle mass. Say you want to, trim with you what you have already. Where you have to have a visual cue of like of how you want to do that or set that off.
Right now we have this. I don't want to call it idolatry, idol worship, but we watch these athletes and we watch these people, and you think that's impossible. So you don't even try to exceed your limits anymore. Yeah, I'm not Jordan, I'm not LeBron, but the fact is, those are freaks of nature. But how do they get that way without work? And I get it, genetics, blah blah blah, whatever. But at the same time, you still control your genetics somewhat. You still control that. That's why we that's why black folks love martial art movies because it's straight up like this. You get your ass kicked, they kill your master, you work out for a year and a half, and then you go whoop the guy's ass. It's real simple math. But that's how it is that you had a limit, you beat it. Now, don't get me wrong, like I said, there's some things you can't do, but when your adrenaline's flowing, when you have the proper motivation, really, you are kind of limitless.
Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, 100%. But like, the thing is, you have to see it though. You have to see it in your mind's eye, and getting beyond the laziness, pushing through that mental mud is the first part because you have to make a decision. Like, do I love myself enough to make this change? Do I love myself enough to reach the next level? I mean, consider it from a mortal level. How do you want to die? Because when you go to the afterlife and you see all of your ancestors and you see all your friends and like loved ones that have passed on, you want to tell them that you rocked that shit, that you
Yeah, for sure.
that you pushed it as far as you could.
I think also something, okay, when we originally started talking, one of the things we talked about is racism or more prejudice and limits. And one of the things, I don't remember exactly how the story goes, but they had talked about Malcolm X being in grade school. And I forgot what he wanted to be, but the teacher said, no, you'd make a good teacher, you make a good carpenter. As if, and don't get me wrong, there's a such thing as reality. And also, I think that, especially as black folks, we kind of abandoned the trades. We got away from that. But the fact of the matter is that it's not fair when somebody puts a limit on you because then all of a sudden that becomes your mean or your norm, and then you don't realize that you can exceed that. But the truth of
Mm.
the matter is, Malcolm was meant for great things. So it's very complicated when it comes to this expectations and abilities and things like that. Um, their whole learning disability thing. We grew up in the '80s where that was a big deal, and you had kids that had learning disabilities. And the funny thing is, most of those kids that were deemed retarded, learning disabilities, or whatever you want to call it, they're working the same places we're working. Now, there's a couple people that just zoned out of society altogether. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But that wasn't because of it. Well, it could have been it could have been because of a disability, or it could have been of some mental disorder, depression, adulthood schizophrenia. That stuff is real. But at the same time, I was ADHD, and my mom told me that I had to take medicine, but she wasn't like, that wasn't a limitation. I got spanked and beaten, it's because she's like, no, nobody looks at you and can tell that you have a disability, so you don't use that. And she didn't even discuss my until I got into high school. It wasn't really discussed with me what I had and what it really meant. All she said is, okay, you got to work harder, you got to read more, you got to read so many pages a day, just because you have difficulty with that. And people think that when you talk about ADHD, or ADD, or ain't no daddy at home disease, attention deficit disorder is not just not being able to or being
But here's
attention.
the thing, though. Here's the thing. Once you were diagnosed, if you gave in to that, if you started feeling sorry for
Exactly.
yourself, then you would have been a completely different person. You would have put
But,
up
but
all
that's the whole
these
point.
walls around yourself.
Yes, that's that. I just remember me and you grew up in the '80s, and I remember when they had this dude come to our grade school, and he ain't had no arms. But they told us to close your eyes, and the dude was playing the
Oh,
drums, and you open
yeah.
your eyes, and the nigga he was playing the drums with his feet and shit. I'm like, but that we grew up where you talked about people overcoming stuff and being successful. Nowadays, we talk about, and like I said, I don't like to rehash stuff that we talk about in other, but that's what this limit thing is about. And I just think that it's crazy as hell that people want to be the victim so much now that, oh man, I couldn't do that because of this.
Oh,
And my point about the ADHD part was, people don't understand that when you read stuff, I actually see the wrong colors and wrong letters. It's like dyslexia. That's part of it. When people like, oh man, and then when you try to tell people like, yeah, I got a problem reading. No, you don't. I'm like, okay, because I'm smarter than you, or because like I said, it wasn't meant to be a limit. It was just meant for me to be aware of something and address it and overcome it. But at the same time, when it comes to that racial stuff, that's a problem too, with prejudice, whatever you want to call it. It's an issue because then you believe that you can't do that, or you believe that the only way you're gonna be successful is entertainer, which is basketball player, athlete, um, or possibly, what I'm saying, Uber driver or whatever. You're limited. But then all of a sudden, the white kids are, you could be president. Because the Brock thing, they tell kids you can be president, but you don't really mean that shit. You're just saying it because it's the politically correct thing to do. That's all bullfeather. That's all
So
bullshit.
I want to speak about self pity because that ties into your limits you set for yourself, and in particular, injuries, healing from injuries. Man, I've had some injuries where I'm laying laying there and I'm healing myself, and I'm marshaling all of my cells like
You see
soldiers
it. You
and
see it in your
to go
mind.
to
Your blood
work
cells
and
are
to
healing.
fight this war, because you know I could lay there and be like, "Woe is me! Oh, I'm so messed up." But for those that don't know me, I prefer to suffer in silence. Like I really don't want anybody's pity. Like when I'm hurt, and I'd rather like just like a wild animal. I'd rather just go off somewhere in the wilderness and just like deal with it on my own. And for the most part, that usually works for me. What I like to do is just, when I have an injury, I might have like, a torn tendon or, something that's like, slightly debilitating. But I know through years of meditation, I know myself. And to give the backstory, once I learned to meditate energetically, I learned how to heal myself because I knew myself. I learned myself. I became more familiar with the mechanics of my biological system. And so what I stopped doing is like, sitting there looking pitiful while I'm healing from injuries. And so like while I'm like healing from injuries, there's actually this internal fight going on, a dialogue saying, "No, motherfucker, you're not gonna win. Like you're not gonna take me over. Like you're not gonna slow me down. You're not gonna stop me from getting back to where I was. And as a matter of fact, this ain't gonna take that long. And I'm gonna heal up faster than normal. And I'm gonna get past this shit." That deals with limits exactly.
That's the multitasking of it. While you're sitting there, you're healing. People don't multitask. If you're too busy feeling sorry for yourself, then you're not multitasking. You got to be like, okay, what am I? They said 6 weeks, okay, 3 weeks, and I'll be doing this, and I'll what I was doing, like when I broke my meniscus, I was lifting weights with my left arm and my right arm. I was doing all that stuff. Or when I just looked last year about this time, I dislocated my shoulder. Well, it's been over a year and a half or something like that. A friend of ours had lost his job, so I went and like gave his wife some money, and I slipped and dislocated my shoulder. I was in some pain, but I jumped up immediately. I knew that I had, okay, my shoulder's out of place. I couldn't even move my right arm, so I jumped up, run to my truck, all adrenaline, and I drive to the hospital. I get to Emmanuel. They're like, "How'd you get here?" I'm like, "Look, motherfucker, the drilling's still going. Y'all need to do y'all job, but the drilling's going. When this wears off, I'm gonna be in pain."
You know what?
And so they
I
could not
really
believe
thought you was about to do that lethal weapon shit where you just slam your arm.
it.
I
Does
thought
been
you was
why
gonna tell
it
me
does.
you was gonna slam it into your. She's
that,
like,
that
I got up and I ran into my truck and hit it 5 times.
First things first. That only happens to people who actually have that problem all the time. Once you've done it like 7 times, they said the tendencies let you do that. Because I thought about doing that. I'm like, okay, no, I can't do it. Fuck this. No. I jumped in the car and drove, and so I get the only there's a bad. I wasn't gonna tell y'all this. So what happens is I call a good friend of ours to come get me, and he comes to get me because I couldn't drive back. And he said, "Hey, they put you on those drugs, and you got kind of violent with them." I was like, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, it took four people had to hold me down and put my shoulder back in." And he said, "You were cussing quite a bit." I'm like, "Oh, well, I apologize." He said, "No, you were polite about it." "Oh, fuck, motherfucker. I hope you're all right." It was so funny. He said, "Yeah, you were throwing them around the room." But I have no recollection of throwing people around the room when they were trying to put my shoulder back in. So I do apologize to that staff. But oh my god, that's messed up. But really, like I said, the point of the story, or the point of our conversation, even when it came to like the situation at the gun range is that people look at you and they categorize you, but it's more for them than it is for you, and you can't allow them to get in your head and limit you. And don't get me wrong, we have disabilities, we have injuries, we have people missing legs. But like I said, we grew up in the '80s where you saw people with prosthetics and they had normal lives, they had kids and everything. And I knew a guy in a wheelchair that was a player. This dude literally in a wheelchair had bitches, and so it wasn't about pity. No, he was not getting pity. And so I think like one of the
No,
things
he
that
was eating lots of pussy. That's what he was doing.
he was not getting pity pussy either. He was getting legitimate puss. And like I said, when we're talking about this, like limitations and people not being useful anymore, one of like I said, the big thing that's on my mind right now is you got all these religions that are talking about having multiple wives. You see these shows like Sister Wives and things like that. And like I said, all these brothers are into that Hebrew like Israelite stuff, which is cool. Which I said is nothing but that rehashed Yahweh ben Yahweh shit, nothing but that rehashed. And people don't get Rastafarians. Rastafarians believe the same thing. Y'all just didn't know that. Y'all think Rastafarians are smoking weed? No, they believe that they're Hebrew. They believe that their Jesus is Haile Selassie. They believe that Jesus came back already. And remember, Haile Selassie is from the house of David. And so, and they all believe you can have multiple wives. And that's the big thing right now. Multiple wives, multiple wives. And I'm like, y'all niggas doing that shit just for the pussy. You're not doing it because first things
They're
first, if a
setting
man
duct tape. They're setting unrealistic limits. Let's talk about unrealistic limits for a second.
we are. We
Right?
100%
But
are.
but that's what I'm saying. Like these guys set out like this unattainable goal. Why? Because most of the guys that are attempting this do not have the means to accomplish it. So then they become
Yes.
so then they become this vampiristic type of succubi creature where they are just draining this psychic energy from these women when they're not really fulfilling what the women
They're
need
part of the
psychic
bargain.
with they're not fulfilling. Hold on, bro. They're not fulfilling what these women want psychically. They want security. Now, the thing is that security appears physically and financially, but it's edified psychically in the women internally. And therefore, they're not reciprocating psychically what these women want.
Hold it. Yeah, what you're saying is there are guys that are womanizers. There are men that have a lot of women. I get that. And
But no,
but
no,
what
no, no,
people
no.
don't understand.
No, stop. Hold it. But see, I'm not talking about just I got hoes. No,
No, no, no.
I'm
Hold
talking
it.
about
I'm
I
going
got
there.
four wives,
Yeah,
and
hold it. I'm going there.
y'all
I'm going
all
there.
eating ramen noodles.
Yeah, I'm going there. I'm going there. What I'm saying is that a lot of brothers, a lot of black men have self-loathing, and since they don't like themselves, what they do is they collect other souls. They collect other people. That's just yeah. And by doing that, like what Roscoe is telling you is these people are draining energy from these other people.
Correct.
They're just ruining lives. Where they have you got guys with 25 kids and stuff, but by 7 different women, all that kind of shit. But it's the same situation. A person, if you're going to have multiple wives, you got to be a prosperous person. The Bible says for you to do that, you got to
You
be.
got to hold shit down. You
You
got
have to own.
listen.
Say that.
It's guys out there calling themselves Big Daddy, but they're not Big Daddy. Okay,
No, they're not.
and
It's a
I ain't talking
title.
about your Johnson. I'm talking about you hold shit down. You Daddy Bankroll. You Big Daddy
Yes.
Warbucks.
If you're going to do that, you need. I always say this, and people get mad at me. For if you want to have multiple wives, you need to own property. And
Yup.
people like, it, first things first, you shouldn't be renting shit. You shouldn't be leasing cars. You shouldn't be doing this. And one, I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I don't. So if you get offended by what I'm saying,
You
I'm
need
not talking
multiple
about you.
properties. You need multiple
Yeah.
properties.
Yes. Because
The thing is, man. Well, first of all, if people listen to this and they got it, they're not offended. So, and if you are offended, then you faking it. So go fuck yourself. But the thing is this, man, is that you need to have not a property. You need multiple properties, one for each of those wives, so that if something happens to you, you can deed that property to that wife, henceforth providing security for that woman, and her children.
you need to take care of her. And the issue is, whenever you watch those shows, excuse me, Sister Wives, and all these white dudes are doing that shit. They own property. They own multiple properties. And I'm not jerking a white guy off. That's not what I'm saying. Because growing up, people don't realize this. We had like two friends whose dads had multiple wives. We didn't realize it back then, but looking back, I understand that now. And they had multiple properties. They had properties in California. They had properties in Oregon. They had properties in Illinois. So there were various properties and et cetera, et cetera, and people didn't understand that. But the thing was, it wasn't your business. All I'm saying is, if you're renting a little two-bedroom apartment, you shouldn't be trying to have multiple wives. Now, if you got multiple lovers, that's one thing. If you got a wife and you got a concubine, cool. But if you talking that multiple wife game, you need to make sure that they're all kids are provided for. You need to make sure that everybody is provided for. And I'm saying that a lot of people ain't doing that shit. And I don't mean that hustling shit. And I don't mean like he said when Roscoe was saying Roman noodles, he's like, look, nah, you can't be eating Roman. Everybody can't be like one family can't be starving, the other one doing well. No, we all need to be doing equally well, or sometimes equally bad. You do fall on hard times.
Hey,
Falling on hard times is not being a
Christmas
loser.
has to be good for everybody in each and
Yeah,
every one of those households.
we're talking, like I said, we're talking about limits or usefulness. A lot of guys, a lot of people live in high school. A lot of black men, a lot of men. I talk black men because I'm a black man. I observe this in white men too, but more so in black men. That you see these old black guys driving the same kind of car they drove in high school, dressing the same kind of way. That's
They're
because they
stuck.
never made it
They're
out of high
stuck.
school.
They peaked in high school, and that was
Yes,
the end of it.
and so that's another thing. People they look talk past glories. Oh, girl, if you had met me, no, motherfucker. Either you doing it now or you never did it. You're a has been that never was, or whatever it is. But the bottom line is knowing your limitations. I get it. We see things on TV and we aspire for weird shit, but you need to aspire for something that's realistic too. You need to recognize, okay, I get it. I'm not a basketball player, but that doesn't mean I can't be a physical specimen and learn martial arts and be successful. Like when they talk about Bruce Lee, remember he was sick as a kid. He did martial arts to get in shape. There's ways around your limitations. Is ways to exceed and excel. Now I get it. You won't be a LeBron, but hell, his mom had a vision for that. I'm about to say that nigga. His mom had a vision for that brother. And she's like, okay, you're gonna do this. Put him in the right schools. That's. But sports is not our only outlet as black men and women. That's not your only outlet. That's not your only thing. And if you're a physical specimen, you need to be a mental specimen also. You need to be pretty staunch. And that's another thing that when they I remember watching Joe Rogan when they talked about Mike Tyson. He was talking about boxers in general. He's talking about fighters. It's like fighters are very intelligent. I know that's not the stereotype, or that's not what's being told. But for you to sit here and battle somebody and analyze that person and see their weaknesses and react and act to this and react to that. So people don't recognize how intelligent Mike Tyson is, or Floyd
Did you
Mayweather, or
see
who these
him? You
people are.
see him working out with the mitts last week? He was hitting the head.
Yeah,
He went. He did a three-piece combo. Then he went twice to the body. You see that,
yes, he still got it.
dude? Of course, man. Dude, listen. He will always be the champ to me. I don't give a shit. The thing is, though, man, like
um,
it felt so good to like see that. It felt good to see that because I'm happy for him. I'm happy for
yes,
him that he still
yes, yes.
loves himself enough to get up and work out and hit the mitts and still shine.
Well, he talks about the ego thing, but and that's what we're talking about. This limitation. This conversation is about limitations and recognize the proper ones. What Tyson said when he had ego, he was worthless, and people don't understand what he's saying. He's saying that everything he did was based on ego and self gratification. It wasn't based on something healthy in achieving a goal and or being a good person, being a good father, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what we're talking about. We're having these multiple wives. And you're doing this stuff it, it's important that you feel good about yourself as a father, as a parent. When your kid looks at you and smiles, or when you teach a kid something, and then later on you hear your kid say something.
But the reason
You know,
why
it,
the reason why that's so important is because you carry the load.
yeah,
You
yeah,
are you are the roof. Now, the woman is the heart. She's the glue that keeps everything together, but you hold the roof up. And everybody, including that woman, they look to you for strength. And it's important that you keep your shit together. And especially in these corona times. Because, ladies and
yeah, yeah,
gentlemen, everyone is being pushed to their limits in these corona times. Now, you're being pushed in many different ways. Financially, you're being pushed
yes,
mentally. I mean,
hmm
I'm sure there's some of you out there that have considered domestic violence. Don't weaken yourself. Don't do that. You're cheating yourself. You're cheating your mate when you lower yourself and do hideous shit like that. The thing is that you're being pushed spiritually too. Your resolve is being pushed. Your calm is being pushed, and you have to look for ways to buoy yourself or keep yourself afloat. In these hard times, you will make it out the other side, but you have to keep your resolve. You have to push beyond this because you are at your limits, and some of you are at your wits' end. But I implore you to hang on because just like pushing through the injury on the road to healing, it's going to hurt. You're going to be in pain. It's going to be uncomfortable. It may even interrupt your sleep and prevent you from sleeping. But you have to push through. Push through that limit. You're going to get through there. Do not give in.
Hey, I'm gonna give an example. Like the thing you're talking about with we all get that, but I've been talking to a lot of people, just texting people, or people text me, and they all know I'm a gun guy. Well, a guy, one of my personal trainers, was my wife's personal trainer that became mine because it's hard for me to train with people, but only if they do martial arts, and this dude is legit. And so back in the day, he had some questionable stuff going on in his life. He lost his ability to have a gun, but he went through the steps to get his gun rights back. It took about 3 years, but he has his gun rights back. And he's like, look, I can't wait to buy a handgun. But that was an artificial limit. That limit, what he got a limit placed on him based on his activity. But then when he matured, became a family man, became a business owner, he realized how important that Second Amendment was. So he took the time, legal fees and all, going from state to state, rectifying his mistakes, and he got his gun rights back. So that's another thing that black people we're told that once you become a felon, you cannot get your gun rights back. That is not true.
So that's a
That is
person.
an
That's a
artificial.
person accepting someone else's limits, and then putting a ceiling on your potential.
Yes. And okay, when Roscoe was talking about that, what he's saying is that everybody in the hood has done a crime, and everybody in the hood, or all these people that you socialize with, have lost their gun rights. So you think that rule applies to you? You dig what I'm saying? You
Without
think that
even
okay,
question,
ain't nothing
just
I can
you
do?
accept it the way it is,
Yes.
and you don't question it at all.
And so that
You fuck yourself by
you
doing
can
that.
get it back. Yeah, you having a gun. Okay, I get it. Okay, you made some mistakes. Okay, you're a criminal. You done crime, but you're no longer a criminal. You've outgrown it. You paid your debt to society. And that whole thing is that we shall overcome, and that march and stuff. That's a sick. What people don't get, the whole time Martin was marching, he had you have two Black Panther parties, and we talked about this. One is the Black Panther Party, one is the Black Panthers Deacons for Defense. You had guys with guns protecting King. You had guys with guns out there, and so when you read the stories and you realize that we always were weaponized, we always had protection. It's that when all of a sudden that when that crack cocaine hit in the '80s, and when you remove the manufacturing base from the inner city, and all of a sudden crack cocaine took over, then all these people got in such severe situations where they can't have guns, and so or the only people that had the guns were the criminals. So no, having a gun, that is an artificial limitation. You should be able to protect yourself. You should be allowed
But
to
see,
protect
but
yourself.
see, there's a lot of people now, especially when they see civility, not society, civility is on the verge of collapse. And I say civility when people stop being civilized. There's still a society, there's still rule of law, but perhaps your neighbor or a person that you don't know might try you or attempt violence on you. You see people that were very passive before this pandemic now
Thank you.
seriously
Preach, preach.
considering at least having a rifle, okay? So they
Hold,
can
hold,
protect their household.
Hey, can I speak on that real quick?
Go with it.
I was about to say this, but of course, me and Roscoe share the same brain, so forgive us. I just thought it was so crazy when all these liberals started buying guns because of this situation. You can't have toilet paper, so they start freaking out. So all the people that believed in gun control 6 months ago are now purchasing guns. So now their whole little narrative changed. But this is another thing. What happened in the news last week to kind of there was a mass shooting up in Canada. So now Trudeau said, "Oh, no more assault rifles." So you see what I'm saying? As soon as that balance got too far pro gun, and these ain't normal people, liberals. These were the ones that didn't believe in guns and said nobody should have a gun. All of a sudden, the gun sales in this country went up. So again, I'm not saying that this is some Illuminati shit. I'm just saying that this is straight up behold a pill horse shit. Where I said horse shit. where we talked about that book a couple episodes ago. Well, that's so you got Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, saying no more assault rifles. Where yeah, it was already illegal to have assault rifles up there. It was their laws were crazy. So whatever gun this guy used, whatever. But this is the kind of example that when it gets out of balance, when you don't have enough checks and balances, or society gets scared. This I'm not saying the story ain't real, but I'm just saying this is the prime example of this is some bullshit. You need to sniff the bullshit. You need to recognize what bullshit smells like. This is not horse shit. This is not dog shit. This is bullshit. Smell it. That's all.
So
Go ahead, sir.
enough of smelling dog shit. The thing is you also consider the reward of breaking through the ceiling, of breaking through the limit. Because
Yes.
when you break through, when you have a breakthrough, let's talk about breakthroughs for a second. And we've all had our share of breakthroughs where we felt like we were on a plateau for a very long time. An endless plateau just went on and on. This suffering is continued, and this monotonous droning existence just went on and on and on. And you're in a dead end job, or your relationship isn't changing, or all these things. Your goals just seem further and further away. And then you start to get traction, and things start to happen. And it seems like one after another, domino, 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 and you are starting to make some headway. And it feels good because you got off that plateau and shit is happening the way you wanted to. And you use words like, I feel like God is on my side again. God has been with you the whole time. It's merely been
Yes.
your perception. But this is what I'm saying is the breakthrough. Speaking about breakthroughs, because breakthroughs are about limitations. Because when you made that breakthrough, you broke through that limit. And you finally broke through that membrane to the other side, to where you want to be. And man, that shit feels outstanding. It feels so good to finally break the fuck through and get off that damn plateau. And then you stop for a second and you look around after you've reached the next peak on that climb. And you take a deep breath and you're like, that's the best time to exercise gratitude. That's the best time to
To yourself.
say
To
to
yourself.
say thank
To
you,
yourself and to God. Yeah.
and to the creator, to say thank you for allowing me to get through this, and thank you for allowing me to have the insight to reflect on where I've been and to see
Mm-hmm.
where I'm going, because that's a big part of the limitation, is breaking the fuck through. Man, those breakthroughs are outstanding. I love them. I love breakthroughs.
Uh,
Not that crazy about the struggle so much, but I'll deal with it.
as black folks, we've been dealing with struggle so much that it's commonplace. But the breakthrough, you gotta count through your victories too. I think people get amnesia over their victories, and then right now in this society, you count your failures more than you count your victories. And sometimes, if you did the math, you'll realize you got 27 victories to 4 or 5 failures. And the thing is, a lot of folks are more afraid of change than they are of staying the same. And so they're afraid of being successful. You got people who are afraid of being successful because when you're successful, that's change. You got to change where you live. You
But
got to change how you dress.
sometimes practice gratitude. Look down at your fingers and see those championship rings. Do not
You mean the
forget
calluses? Yeah, the
the
callus.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I call them championship rings. And the thing is that when you look down and you see them, like, yo, like, I've been rocking this shit for a minute. I'm doing all right. This shit is rough. This shit is rugged. But I'm gonna make it through because I've been tested before, and each time I passed. I'm not gonna fail this.
Look, I know this is probably bad of me to do, but like during the pandemic, I've been watching a lot of the documentaries, the black documentaries, and we always talk about like the different ones, Out of the Darkness, Hidden Colors. You watch those, and one of the things that bugs me,
A white dude made
I
Out of
still
Darkness, right?
he did a damn good job. No, I did not know that
Yeah.
because I'm sure if he didn't feel inferior after that motherfucker, like I'm glad he had to make a sacrifice for his art because that shit was excellent.
Hmm.
Um, One of the guys I like on there is Brother Umar, but he's not the same Brother Umar now, and it's really annoying me because, like I said, when you first see the dude, he was on some righteous shit, and I see that so much with black leaders, and it's not about knowing your limitations, but once it becomes your job to be a leader or talker or comedian or artist or rapper or whatever it is, that a lot of times you become a slave to the industry And I think that sometimes people need to recognize, like, okay, I've said this shit, I've done this shit. Jesse Jackson, Jesse was the
Fuck
shit
him.
back when King was alive, but Jesse ain't did shit but have a couple, babies out of wedlock or whatever. And, Operation Push ain't did shit
He's
for
an
us. And
opportunist,
so,
man. He's an opportunist.
yeah, I don't know if he started out that way or not. And that goes back to our Boulay
I don't
episode.
know, man. Just examine the photograph of Dr. King being shot outside the Lorraine Motel.
And
That's
he
all you need
and
to
he's
know.
pointing the wrong direction. I'm fully aware, and that's why I say he's Boulay. But it's difficult when you see like these Al Sharptons and you find out how much money these guys are making, and you realize, or with the whole when Byron Allen was having his lawsuit, and Umar was on the Breakfast Club talking about Byron's wife being white. I'm like, what? How? Look, I
Yo,
get it.
no, stop. Wait a minute. I gotta say something about Byron Allen. I ain't got no beef with him. I don't give a shit that he's married to a white woman. As a matter of fact, like, if people really want to know about Byron Allen, they need to look into his case against Comcast and why he had a suit against them to begin with. Because
Time
really,
Warner, huge, huge.
listen, what people gotta understand about Byron Allen is that he is actually doing more for black people right now than anybody else is doing right now for black people.
With
He,
his own money,
with
out of
his
pocket.
own money out of pocket, this self-made millionaire challenged Illuminati behemoth on the grounds that they would not allow a all-black sports channel. Now that sounds like a no-brainer. An all-black sports channel, that would be the shit, right?
We're talking about hold up. We're talking about black universities.
Yeah.
We're just talking about we're talking about black universities. He
Yes.
said that they need money. He's shopping the idea around, and they're not interested. Like, nah, how many black athletes that we know, Jerry Rice, all these guys went to black universities.
Yep.
Steve McNair.
Yep.
So this is it's a no brainer. Those schools need money, but what it is they don't want that part of society to be successful. They want you to go to white universities. That's why when Jamil Hill said that going to white universities and start going to black universities, oh, she's racist. No, she's not racist. She's observant. Because how many of these white athletes went to black universities? Yeah, I ain't talking that. There have been some. Don't get me wrong. Hey, the kicker, I went to a black school. The kicker at our school, I went to Langston. He was white. There are white guys going to black
Yeah, but
schools.
that's what we're talking about. We're talking about black athletes at black universities. Yeah, this
Yeah,
stick to the script, okay? The thing is, dude, is the thing is that listen, like Byron Allen to stay on topic. Byron Allen should not be challenged by anybody black about his blackness and his love of black people. Now, we're going to leave it up to you to go and look into that case because you'll be
yes.
shocked to find how racist, and I'm using the word appropriately because he's up against a power structure, racist Comcast and Time Warner was in them not allowing him to create this channel. So you do that on your own. You go look that up on your own because we already did it. We're not going to talk about it anymore because we're talking about limits. But in relation to limits, that is a limit right there. That's a glass
He was
ceiling.
being limited. Yes, he
Yes,
was a glass ceiling.
he was
He was being limited.
not him. All of us were being limited.
Yes,
He is our champion. So let's get that straight. So any of you just like woke quote unquote motherfuckers, fuck being woke. I'm conscious. Always been conscious. All right. So the thing is that like any of you want to be woke motherfuckers out there who challenge Byron Allen's blackness, yo, you need to check yourself and go do some reading, some research of your own before you just jump on some bandwagon with some fucking knucklehead on a radio show who wants to just talk out of his ass and think he's really saying some real shit. Anyway,
Eh, but hold it. That's the whole point of this is that I'm like I was a fan of Umar, but all of a sudden he's getting out of pocket. He's just saying shit for shock value now. He's not saying shit to help the people. And the Byron Allen thing was okay. Why it's so important? It's not just for your cable channel. It's not just for your entertainment. It's because when Comcast began to lose the case, they took their lawyers and started attacking that civil rights bill from the 1800s.
that's right.
So it says that basically if you can't prove the racism is over 80% racism is why they made the decision, then it's not racist. That will affect each and every person of color in this country. I'm talking about black, Mexican,
Yeah.
Hindi, whatever, because what they're saying is that if you can't prove the racism, if you can't prove their intent, then you're not going to win your case. And so that is craziness because Comcast was losing this billions and billions of dollars in this case. to Byron Allen, who was already talking about sharing it with everybody. They're like, we'll attack the civil rights bill that this is based on. That's dirty pool.
Right.
So, and that's why that was my problem with Umar going the route he did. I'm like, okay,
Right.
because
Okay.
his wife is white.
Hey, fuck
I,
that guy. Fuck that guy. Listen, we're not gonna put any
no,
more
no,
energy toward saying that dumbass's name anymore. The thing is,
yeah,
man,
but hold
let's
it.
stay
That's
on point
important.
here. Stay on point,
We,
right?
we are on point. He's not relevant anymore. What happens to these black activists when they no longer become relevant? They just want to do this shit for shock value. They become like
Yeah.
Morton Downey Jr. Gary Springer. It's just shock value. I if you're every situation is different, so you must define the situation. But right now, we ain't listening to Al Sharp. We ain't listening to Umar. We ain't listening to nobody. I get it. You had some past victories, but stop living on your past victories and recognize what we need now, and make sure that we're getting that edification now.
Right.
Make
So
sure that you're.
therefore, the moral of the story is don't let other people set your limits for you. And that is an example of somebody trying to lower the bar and have you stay underneath it as opposed to looking beyond it and seeing it for what it really is and with the truth that lies beyond that. So now I'd like to turn this toward emotional and spiritual limits.
Mm,
Spiritually, we set limits. We set limits based on religion. We set limits based on our spiritual expectations given to us by somebody in the pulpit, in the temple,
the
in
mosque.
in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mosque. So the thing is that this goes to free thinking, thinking for yourself, questioning things on your own, setting your own limits. It's good to digest religious information by all means because you learn, about systems of control that way. And I do mean that when I
Ye-
say that. These are
yes,
systems of
yes,
control.
yes. Preach.
So the thing is that look beyond. Look for the kernel of truth in all these teachings, no matter what the wisdom book is. And do not get caught up in the messenger. People get caught up in the messenger all the time.
That I say it pisses people off, but the first thing you learn when you take sociology class in college, and me and you have said this in other episodes, is that the first thing you learn is that religion is a tool that's used by the bourgeoisie to control the proletariat. That is a European outlook. But when you're African or when you're from other cultures, religion is a tool to reach a higher spirituality. So don't let a European person define how you see spirituality or how you see religion. Religion is baby food. You
But,
understand what I'm
but then
saying?
again, you know what?
You
But
get you.
listen, hey, don't let an African do it either. Do it
No,
for
no, no, no,
yourself.
no, no.
Do it for
So
yourself.
yeah, but yeah, that's where I was going with it. What it is that you got to understand that religion is baby food. When you're a baby, they give you baby food and you drink milk. They don't give you a steak because you can't chew it and digest it. You don't have teeth yet. Well, that's what religion is. Religion is baby food for spirituality. It's teaching you how a higher power can affect your life. And then as you gain more and more knowledge, then you might abandon that book a little bit and become much more spiritual. Spiritual is your actual relationship with that higher power.
Yes.
Religion is how you get introduced to that relationship.
So let's
And
talk.
then
Let's talk about taking off the training wheels. So
oh,
there
for
there are
sure. Meditation.
ways.
That's what meditation is for.
My dude, you spoke right to it.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
thing
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah.
meditation is the key to taking off the training wheels. I remember when I was a kid, I took off the training wheels. No, excuse me. My father took the training wheels off my bike,
Because
and
you wasn't ready.
no, he took them off because he was like, no, you getting too big, rolling around with that shit. He's like, you know what, take that bullshit off. He took them off. He gave me one push, and I was gone. I went down the street, turned at the corner, and kept going.
And he looked
Listen,
back.
ain't look back, man. It was like I had wings on. And crazy part is, when I started meditating, the same thing happened. So, people, I implore you to meditate. Find a system that works for you. Try out different ones. And there's really only two different types. They just have many different names. There is energetic, and then there's mental. Both forms of meditation, but find what you enjoy the most. But you will learn a tremendous amount from yourself spiritually from either. You will learn about how to still your mind and to finally get through these spiritual limitations that we have placed on ourselves based on the teachings of others. That's what we're talking about, removing the training wheels.
And the example I gave earlier, we were talking about in India before the colonizers got there, how these people were doing crazy physical things based on their spirituality.
Yep.
And so sometimes sometimes the introduction of Christianity is not just a control, but it's also a limiter. As in, these people were doing amazing things. These people were
Right.
defeating their colonizers.
Right.
So when they come in and start beating your ass, give you this religion, and don't get me wrong, I'm a black man, so I get tired of people saying that Christianity was thrown. These are complicated conversations that go on for millennia and millennia. We can have those. And I can give explanations of why I believe what I believe. But you got to understand that we didn't have these limits, and that religion was something that inspired you to do great things. It wasn't the thing that inspired you to sit still. It wasn't the thing that intimidates you. And so, like I said, when religion in the wrong hands is going to make you sit still and not oppose, especially if you think your God is white. If you believe that this white God, then you think these white people are sacred, that's going to stop you from ever speaking up. So, no, that's an artificial limit. That is white supremacy. The religion that we're talking about is white supremacy. We ain't talking about Christianity. White supremacy is a religion that these people are worshiping. And there's a lot of black folks that worship white supremacy too. So you got to be careful.
Wow.
But I'm
Ooh,
sorry,
they on
it's
that
just
they
what
on
it
that
is.
Stockholm Willie Lynch syndrome. But
All day long.
yes, they gotta listen to the other episodes for that one. But in closing, what I want to say is that we have to take off the training wheels. We have to push through these limits because that's the only way you're really going to reach your highest potential. Because in life, no matter what you see, especially what Duct Tape said about India, you are really the only thing holding yourself back. You're like, I know money might seem like a factor. Hustle harder, especially now when the economics of this technocracy that we're moving into have shifted. And you can make
Ooh,
money so many different ways now. Truly, you can. And find different ways to hustle harder and push beyond the limits of this current existence in the pandemic that you're going through. This is going to end. It's coming to an end now while we record this. But you got to push through your own expectations of what you can become, what's possible. Ask yourself, get curious about different ways you can make money, but you have to push through. You got to break through the limits.
hey, this is a terrible story to tell, but you're a smart guy, and like I said, you're into guns now. But people don't know where the caliber 45 ACP came from. It came from John Browning. What happened when the colonizers, when England was colonizing these islands, they go to this island, and back then they only had like most of the calibers they had were like 38s. They're all forms of 38. Even the 9mm is a form of the 38. The projectile is, and they're shooting these native people, and they're not dying. They're shooting them multiple times because their handguns were so small, and because of their spirituality or their belief, these natives were getting shot 5 and 6 times and still beating up the white people. So they're like, we need a bigger caliber. So John Browning came out with the 45 ACP. Messed up story, but what I'm explaining is that those people that had no limitations, they were not afraid of being shot,
You're
shot
talking
at, or
about the
anything else.
Arawak Indians, the Maroons that were already there when they got there.
They whooped ass after being shot because they were shooting them with handguns. And
Because you're
like I
up
said,
against primal nature. And that
yes,
primal man was like, get that pussy ass shit out of here. I'm gonna
man, you
get you.
can't, you don't define me, motherfucker.
Right.
And so that's what happens. Their limits were not set by that white man. And so the white man had to get better. Unfortunately,
Well,
made the ACP
well,
for,
unfortunately,
but
that 45 set the limit, but you
yeah,
know.
push it to the limit. But yeah, hey, we signing out.
Hold
Thank
up,
y'all.
hang
Love
on,
you.
hang
God
on.
bless.
One last thing I want to say. You look around yourself, look inside yourself, and see what it is you want to change about yourself, because those are the limits, and you set them by your sedentary lifestyle, maybe, or your monetary lifestyle, or even your romantic lifestyle, or your family lifestyle. What can you make better about yourself? Those are the limits. Look to go beyond those. Push through that. Do it with everything you can and come from a good place while you do it, and you will do it. No matter how long it takes, stay in that fight. Push through that mud, you'll make it through. Push through the limit. We out. Peace.
Holla back.